A medieval knight was not always fighting. Most of his life passed far from the battlefield. War was rare. Preparation was constant. When there was no fighting, a knight's days were shaped by duty, discipline, and waiting. A knight did not wake to glory. He woke to responsibility. Land had to be managed. Servants had to be controlled. Weapons had to be maintained. Armor had to be cleaned, repaired, and fitted again and again. Rust was an enemy as real as any blade. Horses were central to a knight's life. They were expensive, difficult, dangerous. A knight spent hours training horses, feeding them, checking hooves, and breaking young mounts. Without a horse, a knight was nothing. Caring for animals was as important as learning to kill. Training never stopped. Even in peace, the body had to be ready. Knights practiced swordplay, lance work, and wrestling. They trained alone. They trained with others. They trained until muscle memory replaced thought. Skill faded quickly, so training filled long days. Strength mattered. Endurance mattered more. Knights hunted often. Not only for food, hunting was training for war. Tracking prey sharpened focus. Chasing it built stamina. Killing it reinforced dominance. The hunt was a controlled version of battle. Violence without enemy soldiers. Hunting was also privilege. Only nobles were allowed to hunt certain lands. Breaking hunting laws was punished harshly. Power was enforced through access to animals and land. A knight's life was deeply tied to land ownership. He collected rents, settled disputes, punished disobedience. Peasants feared him more than they admired him. Protection came with control. Justice was personal. A knight could decide punishment on the spot. Beatings were common. Mercy was optional. Honor did not mean kindness. It meant authority. Religion shaped every day. Knights prayed, often, before meals, before travel, before sleep. They confessed sins of violence while preparing for more violence. The Church did not remove brutality. It justified it. A knight learned when killing was acceptable and when it was holy. Castles were not quiet. They were busy, noisy, cold, drafty. Knights spent time supervising repairs. Stone cracked, wood rotted. Defenses needed constant attention. A weak wall invited death. A knight's reputation mattered. Honor was currency. Insults could lead to duels. Rumors could start feuds. Knights spent time maintaining alliances through feasts, gifts, and marriages. Politics filled the space where war did not. Marriage was rarely about love. It was strategy, land, power, bloodlines. A knight's wife managed estates during absence, but her obedience was expected. Her independence was limited. Children were trained early. Boys learned weapons. Girls learned alliances. Family was preparation for future conflict. Knights also spent time waiting. Waiting for war. Waiting for summons. Waiting for opportunity. Boredom was dangerous. Idle nights caused trouble. Drinking, gambling, fighting among themselves. Violence did not disappear in peace. it just changed shape. Knights enforced order through presence alone. Armor and weapons were messages. Fear kept stability. And this was daily life, not glory, not battle, but control, routine, preparation, and the quiet knowledge that peace was temporary. Tournaments filled the space between wars. They were not games, they were rehearsals for killing. Knights trained to strike, to endure pain, to dominate an opponent in front of witnesses. Armor was heavy, falls were brutal, bones broke, men died, crowds watched. Honor was displayed through violence. Victory increased reputation. Defeat meant humiliation. A knight's worth was constantly tested. Cruelty did not disappear in times of peace, it simply turned inward. Knights enforced discipline with force. Disobedient peasants were punished publicly. Fear was a tool. Mercy was rare and strategic. Power needed reminders. Alcohol flowed freely. Feasts lasted long hours. Drunken brawls were common. Arguments over honor ended in bloodshed. Violence among knights was tolerated, sometimes encouraged. It kept men sharp. The law rarely restrained the noble class. A knight's body paid the price. Years of training destroyed joints. Old wounds never healed. Infections lingered. Pain became constant. There were no surgeons capable of repair. Only endurance, only prayer. A knight learned to live with pain long before old age. Faith followed him closely. Knights donated to churches, funded chapels, sought forgiveness in advance. Violence created guilt. Religion offered balance. War could be sin, or it could be sacred. The line was thin, and often redrawn to suit power. As years passed, strength faded. A knight feared irrelevance. To be unable to fight was to lose identity. Younger men rose, faster, stronger, ambitious. The older knight became advisor, trainer, observer, or burden. Some retired to estates. Some joined religious orders. Others drank themselves into obscurity. There was no pension, no honor in weakness, only memory. The castle did not slow for aging. Responsibilities continued. Authority depended on fear. Fear depended on strength. When strength faded, so did obedience. Knights clung to symbols, titles, stories of past battles, scars displayed like trophies. They reminded others of what once was. Death remained close. Illness struck without warning. A fall from a horse could end everything. Medical care was limited. Infection was often fatal. Knights prepared for death as carefully as they prepared for war. Wills were written, confessions made, debts paid. A knight wanted to die clean, forgiven, buried with symbols of status. Armor sometimes placed on the body as if death required protection. Legacy mattered. Land passed on. Names continued. Bloodlines survived or vanished. This was the true concern in the end. Not honor, not glory, but memory. What medieval knights did when they were not fighting was rarely peaceful. It was maintenance of power, training for violence, control over land and people, waiting, always waiting, because war was never far. Peace was temporary, and a night was shaped not by battle alone, but by everything that happened between them.